Good morning, I'm Catherine Ross, and I'm here with Jim Cramer. We're joining you via Skype this morning in our efforts to do our part of social distancing. So, Jim, what's top of mind for you this morning?
Top of mind is oil. Oil must hold $20 a barrel. I talk all the time to my friend Rusty Brazil at rbn.com. He does the best energy work in the world, and he's talking about how they're still pumping 13 million barrels in this country. We still have some room for it, but it's being reserved by some of the tank companies because they think it's going to really break down. If it really, really breaks down, then we are going to see the algorithmic programs trash the market. If it doesn't, if oil goes up, I think that what you're going to see is a stabilization and then maybe another run. But oil is crucial here. And I know that there's so much supply. And if the president doesn't make some sort of deal with the Saudis or the Russians, then you are going to see oil go lower. There's just too much in the world.
So, oil is a crucial part of the markets. And I'm wondering, with the stimulus bill, we're waiting for the vote on that. But with the U.S. moving up in case count to be the highest in the world, is that having an impact on the market narrative, do you think?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're really, there are different parts of the country that's approached this, sadly, like what happened in 1918. We had it's really incredible. We had the playbook from 1918, the Spanish flu, the Great Influenza. And the playbook was very clear, which is that there's the St. Louis playbook where you did basically social distancing and didn't go outdoors. And then there was the Philadelphia playbook, which was they held a giant war bond rally for 200,000 people, and they ended up having the most deaths. It was almost instant. You knew which one was right. And somehow Mayor de Blasio, somehow the people who run New Orleans these days didn't play with it. They just did. They used the Philadelphia playbook, and California, San Francisco used the St. Louis playbook. It was plain as day which playbook was right, and it's almost criminal what happened here, because when you see what's going on in New York, you know that they just chose not the stupid option, but what I regard as being almost the criminal option, since you knew what killed people and knew what didn't. And that's why New York has become what I regard as an unnatural disaster, a man-made disaster, and it's just horrendous. So it's front and center. Now, look, so is Madrid, where my daughter is. I mean, they had 770 deaths yesterday. Italy, it's still out of control. It is proving to be very difficult unless you truly invoke a sort of martial law lockdown. Stay home. And New York's the opposite. People still playing basketball. They have the subway. Obviously, if you didn't, if they just made everybody stay home, the numbers would drop. Otherwise, the numbers are going to keep getting bad, and it's really affecting everything. Obviously, I'm sensitive to the idea that people are getting very, very sick or dying. And one of the things that's happened with social media is I think there are no hawks who are more hawkish than I am about China trade. I feel very, very strongly that the Chinese have hosed us for years and taken advantage of us, and that our presidents have been complicit. And I don't think anybody, even including Peter Navarro, are as tough as I am, because I've had this position for 25 years. But I do say that we have to go to them and say, listen, you got to give us some of those masks and some of those ventilators because you have excess supply because you beat it. And if you give it to us, maybe we'll even start talking about trade in a different way. So that's one of the things that I find really important. And it's also really important that the president right now, the real Donald Trump, is just on a tear against GM. And to quote, as usual with this General Motors, things just never seem to work out. They said they were going to give us 40,000 much needed ventilators very quickly. Now they're saying only be 6,000 in late April, and they want top dollar. Always a mess with Mary B. Woo! That is just unbelievable. As you ask him to open the Lordstown plant, they ought to do it. They're knuckleheads. I mean, just do it. I know you can say, well, there's probably some excuse, but General Motors led the war effort in World War II. And Mary Barra should lead the war effort in this war.
Well, we're seeing companies such as Tesla reopen its New York Gigafactory for ventilator use or to create ventilators, and same with Ford with that GE Healthcare and the 3M partnerships.
Right.
Jim, based on the tweets, and your tweet actually, based on Donald Trump's tweet and your tweet about trade versus healthcare, Is it important to start just throwing politics out the window at this stage and focusing on getting the necessary items to healthcare workers?
Yeah, look, I gave my mask up, and I did so, one of those Honeywell masks. And I did want to do that, but to a healthcare worker who I know if he doesn't have something, he is going to get sick. The misallocation of resources on this, I had a man yesterday from a company, Puritan, that makes the swabs, and the swabs are they're not commodity. They're very difficult to make, and the government just didn't order enough. Went through the distributors, really screwed it up. Just didn't do it right. The government had, I think, a very early call on N95 masks and didn't do it right. The government was not able to procure all the ventilators it needs, but there you have a situation where you've got competitors in Spain and Italy. But it just bums me out to see how we were not ready, and that therefore we do have to go not hat in hand because the Chinese owe us. And I happen to think I'm one of those people who thinks, listen, they have these wet markets. They did this before. They use very unsanitary conditions. They cause viruses, and then other people get the viruses. I do not regard that as being some sort of xenophobic rap by me, but the Chinese owe us this, and they should give us the excess ventilators, and they should give us all the N95 masks that I think they're hoarding. They should put them on a FedEx plane and get them right now to New York City so that no more healthcare workers get this, and particularly in the virulent form that the healthcare guys seem to be getting. I know it's a hard line, Kathy. I don't care.
Yeah. Jim, millions of Americans are now under lockdown, and this might be one of the first weekends that a lot of these Americans are experiencing not being able to go out. So you're a very well-read man, and I want to ask, for anyone who's looking for some good reads this weekend, what are your top 5 quarantine books for them?
Oh, that's great that you asked me that. Okay, right now I am reading The Institute by Stephen King. It is fabulous. You cannot put it down. I mean, I am just struck. It's one of the great works. It's maybe I read all Stephen King. It may be one of my absolute favorites. And I think that, I don't know. I mean, it's got great characters. I was thinking who would play the kids in the movies. It's really good. I'm going to give you some other ones that I like. Oh, I'm starting Succession this weekend. Okay. And I can't wait to do that. Everyone tells me to watch that.
I can't wait for you to watch that. We've got to talk about it.
Really? Okay. I mean, I can't wait to read that. There's a new book that my wife just bought me about when Hitler just became the chancellor. I can't wait to read that, when he came the Fuhrer. I was also reading a book about the Eastern Front and how the Eastern Front, how unprepared the Nazis were to take on the Russians. You always forget that the Soviets were good. And then in my other place, I'm reading Leningrad, which is a huge tome about how 750,000 people died of starvation as Leningrad was encircled by the Nazis in 1941, and then encircled for 900 days, which I find is apt for what I feel life is like here. So I got a lot of things going, but I heavily recommend The Institute. It's so good.
All right. So, Jim, over on Twitter this morning, I got a really important question that I think a lot of investors at this point are asking themselves, and that's, how can you determine whether or not a company's dividend is safe? So when you're talking to the portfolio, give us some insight on just what, like, high level, what are you looking for?
All right, well, first I look to see if it's too big. Everyone told me that Macy's dividend was safe, and then when it got to 8, 9, I said, whoa, not safe. Now, Kohl's has a very good balance sheet, and they have buyback, but Kohl's dividend is 16%. No. If it's got a dividend that is far in excess of what the classic utilities are offering, then I got to tell you, don't risk it. Don't risk that dividend. Another one that a lot of people love that they always used to call on, Annaly Capital. Annaly Capital Management, 16%. This stock went down from 11 to 5 in a heartbeat. These are the ones that you are attracted to by yield, and the yields just, well, let's just say you don't want to be there. And I find the drugs have yields that are good. I'm not sure about the banks. I think the banks look like they're good, but I just think that when you look at some of these things like a mortgage REIT, like Annaly, it's cratering because there's forgiveness on these mortgages. So that's something to watch. The one that is at the fulcrum right now, literally at the fulcrum for me, is Wells Fargo. I just don't know. I don't know. I think Wells Fargo is safe. But you know what? I said that you can keep your money in Bear and it was safe. And people said, oh, he recommended Bear because it was my time on the cross. I am not saying that I think that Wells Fargo is safe. I'm saying that it sure seems like it could be because Charlie Scharf just bought a lot of stock and it yields 7. If I could get my arms around that one, that is the one that I think's great. Now let's switch back again to something that we screwed up on for action alerts. Schlumberger, okay? That's got a 14% yield. Not going to cut it. I felt that Ford, when it got to 10, they told me that Ford not to worry. And I was saying, do not trust that dividend. I'm looking at GM right now. GM yields 7, but the president just making that vicious assault. I don't know. I don't want to touch that one either. I look
All
to
right,
see
Jim.
big. And then I look at the cash flow, obviously. But the cash flows, you don't know. I mean, did you know that Macy's was not going to open? I mean, it's kind of like, let's give you another one, okay? Tanger Factory. This is the one, Tanger's, the off-price place. I mean, everyone loves off-price, right? $6 stock. It's down 10% today. It yields 23%. I find that 23% suspicious. I'm skeptical of it. And that's a very well-run company. That another one that I think the world of Simon Property Group, they paid $33 billion in distributions. That yields 15%. It's down 7.7% today. I don't know. Really, really interesting.
All right, Jim, as always, thank you so much for your insight. And guys, please keep tweeting at us at by Catherine Ross, at TheStreet, and of course at Jim Cramer. So we will be answering your questions all through next week. Thank you for watching this week. And we are now heading over to our Action Alerts Plus Daily Rundown Show over on actionalertsplus.com. I'm Catherine Ross, and we will see you next week.